for a one-legged Swede. You're doing very, very well.
That could have gone horribly wrong.
So, Joe, I believe you're going to be asking us some questions. Is that correct? Can I open with a question first?
Okay.
This is completely... Can I ask the room, where was everybody at 6:30 a.m. for the 10-kilometre run to the Acropolis? We had a lot of no-shows this morning, and there was only 3 of us who turned up. You weren't there. You've got a good excuse. So tomorrow morning, everyone's got to be there, 6:30 a.m. Beautiful sunrise. If you haven't done it, strongly recommend it.
Okay. Yeah, hashtag save the career. Sure, I'll be there. Okay, well, right. I think kicking off this morning, it's really lovely to see you all. I think, though, before we get into a whole day of thought leadership, disruption, and everything that we're going to be talking about, I think the last 2 years need to be acknowledged and need to be discussed. So we've just been through the worst disruption that the travel industry has known. So I'm really thrilled, as we're going to talk about this, to have this conversation with the ever-charismatic Chris Galanty and the fabulous one-legged Marcus Eklund, to talk about how we've survived and how we've overcome at FCM. So we're going to spend the next few minutes going over some quick-fire questions. So sit tight while we dive deep into their minds, which is also an equally scary thought. So Chris, I'm going to start with you and ask you, what's been the biggest challenge for Flight Centre Travel Group through the entire pandemic?
Okay, that's a quick-fire question.
Quick fire,
okay.
go for it.
I think I could write a book on this.
You've got 60 seconds.
60 seconds. If I have to condense it down, I think I'd probably say the biggest challenge was balancing the urgent priorities that we had to deal with as a management team whilst thinking about the future. Okay. So balancing the short-term urgent crisis priorities with planning what the future world would look like and how we'd respond to it. And that's a challenge for every business. That's not unusual. But doing it as a travel company during a pandemic was particularly challenging. I think what we did at the beginning was we really had a core group of people thinking about the future, working on the future, leadership, and then a core group of leadership running the day-to-day operations. And they worked together, but it sort of allowed us to really reinvent the business. And you're going to see a lot of that today. And almost from day one, whilst everything was going on around us, we had that focus on the future. And I think that was a challenge because the risk was everybody focusing on the day-to-day crisis. And if we'd have done that, I think we'd have re-emerged as the same business we were in 2019, and we wouldn't have been really fit for the modern world. So that was a challenge. I think we dealt with it well. As a credit to our leadership team. But yeah, that was the biggest challenge, I think.
And I think it was quite interesting because, as I recall, at the beginning of that pandemic, we really had no sense of how long it was going to last. So was it short-term or was it long-term? So what were the sacrifices that you had to make within the business? And, why were they the ones that you've selected?
God, this is a tough question for
Did you think you were getting it easy?
Yeah, I thought I was. Look, I wouldn't say sacrifice, I'd say choices. I think we had to make choices. And we do, running a business, everyone here runs a business, you always have to make choices. That's what strategy is. I think the choices were more pronounced, were more urgent, were tougher. So, and we chose to invest in technology, in brand, in growth, and that meant we had to make some tougher choices around prioritization, really making the decision we couldn't do everything. Yeah. So we had to refocus on what we were going to do, how we were going to do that as high quality as we could, and then not try and do everything. So it was really about choices, and I think there's a lot of lessons in that. Maybe, maybe every industry should go through a crisis where your revenues are down 90% for 18 months, because it really focuses your decision making.
I'm sure it does.
I think that was probably it. Choices, not sacrifices, I'd say.
Yeah. Indeed. I think there is somebody sitting in the audience, he shall remain nameless, that always coins the phrase, never waste a good crisis. She knows who I mean. Okay, so Marcus, let me come to you. So FCM has, I think, been able to prosper despite the crisis and despite the challenges. Why do you think that is?
Very short and snap question, isn't it? So, no, it's a little bit as Chris was mentioning as well. In the beginning of these things, we had to make choices or prioritization for it. And I think it's a fair degree of luck into some of these things. But number one, we went into this crisis saying we need to live up to our customer commitments. If the customer can't trust a Team C in these kind of times, they can't trust us anytime. So we said we need to live up to this. And what that means, make sure we have, for example, account management staff there to interact with the customers. But it also means sure that we continue implementing and service customers, which we were onboarding before as well. So that's what number one thing we did. The second part, as Chris alluded to as well, was looking at actually how do we take an opportunity out of this and start actually looking at the future and actually structure ourselves and grow into these things. And for us, that means mainly two things. One, investing in technology. We managed to accelerate quite a few of our projects, which maybe were planned to take 5 years, to kind of 1 or 2 years, which was an advantage given the current time as well. And the other aspect of saying we want to actually come out of this as a bigger organization, and therefore we also invested heavily into sales as well. Very different sales mechanism during the last couple of years, but I think these aspects have proven a little bit that actually we're coming out of this crisis, and not saying we're out fully yet in terms of everything, but really coming out in a very nice way and be ready actually to service more customers, but also give a higher satisfaction to existing customers as well. But yes, all this is good, but I would say it's a fair degree of luck into that as well, Joe.
Yes, and I think I used the word prosper there in the question. And do you think, given some of the obstacles and the challenges that we were facing and still face, is prosper the right word? Do you
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I don't think the travel industry has prospered quite yet. It has prospered before COVID, but actually we're on a good path to recovery, and it's not without its bumps. And I think all of you within the industry knows this very well, from the suppliers, from the airports, from the TMCs, even from within your corporate programs. There's a lot of pressure there at the moment, but I think we're getting into a better world of travel.
Okay. Do you think the industry will come out of this as a better, leaner machine than we were going into it?
I hope so. As I said before, let's not waste a good crisis, but I also think there are very important topics we're going to discuss today, for example, that how does the travel industry embrace sustainability in a much better way. I profoundly believe if we don't solve this for the next few years, our industry will never be something we can actually tell our children about. We need to make sure it is a sustainable travel industry moving forward.
Okay, we'll hear a lot about that today, as you say. So I think they say hindsight is 20/20. Chris, what would you have done differently, if anything, in retrospect coming into this?
Look, I think you can't rewrite history.
No.
You know, we did what we did, and I think we made, as I said, we made some tough choices. So I'm not sure there's much point in reviewing that right now. The first thing I'd say is the crisis is not over. For those of you who are traveling, the crisis is very much still going on. There's airlines cancelling hundreds of flights, as we know. They're under extreme pressure. You know, you guys who are seeing your travelers start traveling again, you can see the challenges that are still out there. It's not over. If you're in the travel industry, it's not over. It may feel like it in your day-to-day life, COVID's over. But the travel industry, we're in this rapid recovery now. And I think there's huge challenges still ahead. I think for me, what's going to be interesting really here at the Think event and over this week is listening to customers and hearing their feedback on what could we have done differently. You know, what do we need to do now to make sure the recovery is as frictionless as possible. So I think we're very much in listening mode now, the whole industry, not just FCM.
Yeah.
And, you know, I talk to CEOs and senior executives at other parts of the industry, airlines, airports, hotel chains, etc. And everyone's got to listen and learn from customers on the corporate and the leisure side. But look, the good news is it shows how resilient the industry is. It shows how important travel is as an activity, both for holidays, for family life, as well as for business. And I think, you know, for me, it's about really rethinking, you know, how do we build back a better industry? And again, that's way beyond FCM. That's the whole industry. And I think it's, you know, it's a pretty exciting time, almost a rebirth of the industry. And that's something we should, you know, be excited about.
Yes, I heard somebody saying just last week that actually the progress we've made in the last 2 years is the equivalent of what would have taken place in 10 had the pandemic not happened, just with the technology and the way we travel. It's quite interesting because I remember the conversations back in the early days of travel would not return. We would never see this kind of growth again. I think a few of the consulting houses had predicted it would permanently be at 75% for the next 6 or 7 years. But that has not been our experience, has it, Marcus? It's, you know, once the allowances or the restrictions are lifted, there is a strong pent-up demand to travel.
Yeah, and I think everybody who works in the industry, we feel it at the moment, but it's fantastic to see that need for humans to start to interact face-to-face as well. I think we all had our Teams moments and Zoom moments, and I'm happy that I'm not on any mute button at the moment, so that's very positive. But I think it's very engaging to see the industry coming back. But to the points earlier, I think we also be cautious that it's not coming back as before. I think we lost some of the reasons why people travel. Maybe you took 5 trips to a certain location per year beforehand, now maybe it's only going to be 4. So I do think there's a little bit more of a sanity coming into these things as well, but I don't think it's going to be that 75% as we predicted beforehand. This year, what we see though is a much more of a bumpy ride. So we see obviously right now a huge turn up, and expecting that's going to go down a little bit as well, because people realize there's still budgets and financials behind this as well, and then coming up to a bit of a normality, afterward as well. But it's going to be interesting to see the business coming back, and I think more than anything, to see people get together as well. We also see the meeting and events aspect coming back much stronger than anybody had predicted before as well, which is equally encouraging to see. This is actually where humans do the best work together.
And we've heard some customers say, you know, policies around travel less, but travel better.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, employee retention. There's a tight labour market globally at the moment, and that travel less, travel better is something that we're hearing a lot of. And I think that's something that may become a long-term trend.
Absolutely. And also, as most of you know, within your corporations as well, with more virtual work comes more of an identity crisis for corporation. How do you build up corporate culture? And we see that actually travel is a very good facilitator to these things as well. So again, travel coming back, but slightly different needs.
True. So in the spirit of open transparency amongst a few thousand of our closest friends, was there any opportunities that you think FCM missed? And if so, where? Basically, what have been your learnings through this?
I think almost the same question you asked Chris before, right? So I have to repeat that answer almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I make more mistakes than Chris, I have more regrets. No, but jokes aside, I think, as I said, there are a lot of things in the situation you could probably have done differently for these things. I come back to a few things as we see right now, and again, hindsight is the fantastic medicine to everything. Ideally, we would have actually hired thousands of consultants a few months back, because that means that we'll be ready for these things. But also, as we discussed before, it's been 2 years right now. We were never sure when travel is going to come back, how it's going to come back for all these things. But I think it's one thing that I know from both your travelers for corporation side, but also from our consultant side. They are under an enormous amount of pressure at the moment. It's not because no one wants to do a good job in the industry. It's actually just getting these machines starting back again takes time. So if there's one regret, Joe, I'd probably say that. The other part, which again, as an industry, I think we really need to take a bit more serious, we probably should have done it even last year, is the sustainability part. So again, we spoke about it a lot last year. There was a lot of discussions. I think it was the #1 topic in all these panels and everything. We didn't see that much action, to be fair. And I think that is what we're expecting for 22 and 23, to see how can we concretely drive sustainability forward.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask both of you one final question, so just be aware that I'm coming to the next one afterwards. So for the next 6 to 12 months, what do you anticipate in FCM for you, Marcus, and Flight Centre for you, Chris? Next 6 to 12 months, what will be your biggest challenges as we emerge?
The biggest challenge, I'll take it first, Chris, so you get the time to think. The biggest challenge, by all means, would be actually to get up and actually take all this business travel recovery and stabilize it. So making sure we deliver on all these customer commitments we have, but also getting our service, our people up and running, and delivering those technology enhancements to give a much better digital experience. So coming back to that whole digital and service capabilities, walking hand in hand, for me, the 12 months is going to be very critical for this. And that is very much linked to also the supplier aspect of it. Because a lot of these things the team sees, they take a lot of the heat from the travelers, we should do a better job sometimes, but equally from the airline perspective, from the hotel perspective, from the infrastructure around this, there's also something we need to actually gear up this machine. So the biggest challenge for the next 12 months will definitely be that restart of the travel industry machine.
Thank you. And for Flight Centre as a wider collective?
Look, I'd have to say the same answer really, the recovery, but I'm not going to repeat that. So let's look at what else. I think another challenge for us over the next 12 months is there's a lot of innovation that's happened in our group over the last 2 years, particularly in technology. And you'll hear about some of it, I'm sure, over the next couple of days.
Yep.
So really it's about how do we bring that to our customers? So how do we take a lot of the innovation, a lot of the investment, a lot of thinking we've done in all of our brands, but talking about FCM today, and bring that to customers. So how do we get the benefits of that innovation into our customers' hands? And I think it's an exciting challenge.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we're really thrilled about, but it's still a challenge because we've got to there's no point having innovation and great product and great technology unless customers are using it.
Absolutely.
So that's a big opportunity for us. But I would say, if I'm honest, that Marcus is spot on. The biggest challenge for the whole industry is coming back and giving customers a great experience, and that's what we've got to do collectively.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our first session today and hearing from the great and deeply intelligent minds of Marcus and Chris. It's been really good to talk to you both today. I'm now going to introduce on stage our FCM's very own Scott Reddy, who's going to walk us through what the rest of the morning holds. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all.